I'd like to call the Board of Commissioners regular monthly meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
which stands
one
one nation,
indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. First item is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any issues they would like to add or delete prior to approving the agenda? No?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as it is presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Ed, you're in there, right? Okay.
Yes.
He's voting
Aye.
too. Next is based on the agenda we have just approved. Are there any disclosures or conflicts of interest? We'll go through.
No.
Larry?
No.
No.
No. Ted?
No,
Okay, thank you. No disclosures or conflicts of interest. Next item is the announcements. On November 11th, which is tomorrow, there will be a celebration of Veterans Day at the Blue Star Memorial at the corner of Highway 58 and Pine Knoll Boulevard. And the Garden Club has put together a nice little program that will probably last about 30 to 45 minutes. And that will be followed by a reception at Veterans Park here behind Town Hall immediately after. And Town Hall will be closed, but the reception itself will take place in the little, on the deck here overlooking the sound, and the restrooms out behind Town Hall will be open. So
What time is that?
that the Veterans Day events themselves take place at 4 o'clock at the Blue Star Memorial.
Okay.
John, is there any arrangements made in case of inclement weather?
Not that I know of. I think it's not supposed to rain until tomorrow evening.
I just looked at the weather online. It's supposed to be, a little cool, and that's about it. No rain.
But I suppose if we had a real big storm, we would cancel it. I mean, if it's actually raining during the event, I'm sure. But, okay, on November 25th, which is Thanksgiving Day, we're sponsoring a turkey trot again, which will begin at 9 o'clock in the morning at McNeil Park. And we're going to follow the traditional route through the country club, and there will be a separate route for people who bring their dogs, because the country club doesn't want us to have dogs out on their property. But that's at 9 o'clock at McNeil Park. And the following Saturday, right after Thanksgiving Day, is the Christmas Flotilla. And we're going to set up, I think, with a Santa Claus and with the town's public address system in McNeil Park, which will be a primary viewing spot for boats as they go by. And I believe the flotilla will actually take off around 5 o'clock from Brock Basin and probably get to McNeil Park a little bit after, quarter after 5 or 5:30 in that time frame. And on December 8th is our next meeting, and Town Hall will still be closed, but at that meeting, there will be a swearing in for the officials who were just elected or re-elected in the last election on November 2nd. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up before we move on? Okay. Next up is public comment. Charlie, do we have any public comments?
Yes, I have Robert Cox, who'd like to make a public comment.
Okay. Robert,
Charlie,
you're
can
on.
you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes,
Great.
sir.
Well, first, Thanks for letting me have a chance to address you tonight. I think the first thing I'd like to say is it's good to see Ted on the screen as opposed to where he was a day or so ago. So welcome back, and we wish you continued better health as time goes on here.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a quick comment on parks, and the real issue I think is who can and how they can be utilized. I think I just really wanted to reaffirm with everybody that the parks in town, generally speaking, are part of the various HOAs. And I'm not speaking for any of the other HOAs, specifically Pikes Co., but I am speaking for PKA. I have spoken with Rick Cox. He shares concerns, and they're experiencing the same kinds of things that we are. The more we open, the HOAs open their parks up to public events, the more I think you're going to see the HOAs become more restrictive in terms of what they permit to occur in them. So I've heard at least one of our elected officials state that we've got really enough parks in town that we don't need to have a public park for the town itself. And that will be, I think, a debate that just goes forward, in time between the commissioners and the citizens. But just keep in mind that they are private parks, and any opportunity for use as a public or in a public event creates an issue for the particular HOA, and it'll be up to the individual HOAs as to how they deal with it. But I just wanted to kind of reaffirm that with everybody tonight, that the parks that we have been using are private, and the HOAs, I think, are feeling the strain of that at this point for public events that are used there. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We in our use of Garner Park for the Kayak for the Warriors events, also is the staging area for the Easter egg hunt and the 4th of July parade. We've always worked closely with Pikes Co. to get their permission to use their parks. And we do the same with the Turkey Trot and the use of McNeil Park as a viewing venue for the Christmas Flotilla. And if Pikes Co. is concerned about that, I would hope that they would raise this issue directly with us when we go to them and ask for permission to use their parks. I know that Brock Basin is being used, I think, as a staging area for the Christmas Flotilla, but that should be in the water, I believe.
There was, I think 7 or 8 years ago, there was a little discussion of Pikes Co. wanting to charge fees and so forth. And we had some discussion about maybe coming up with an agreement, and it sort of drifted, no pun intended, but it sort of drifted away. Maybe that's something we should look at again, rather than so at least some, with any of these events, there's a agreement relationship, not to overly formalize it, but just so there's not a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
To improve communication, that's all.
Even just like a cleaning fee.
Right, yeah, if there's a cost, we should,
Something like that.
we should,
That's a good
the
idea.
town should meet its responsibility, I think, right?
Anybody else like to add anything on this point?
I might add that there is one town park, Veterans Park, which is right here at Town Hall. It's just basically a path in the woods that people can walk if they like to. And the deck also back there behind Town Hall. Other than that, the town really doesn't own any land, probably, something that could be looked at in the future. But to my knowledge, excuse me, I don't believe the town owns any land that would be suitable to develop a park.
Charlie? Okay, please.
So Holly Martinson on Dogwood Circle sent me a message that she'd like to speak. And then recently she had something come up, but she sent me this flyer that she'd like me to share with all of you. This is from the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. And this is for historic preservation tax incentives for income producing properties. Federal and state rehabilitation tax credits provide jobs, bolster the tax base, and revitalize existing buildings and infrastructure while preserving the state's priceless historic character. These programs, administered by our office, the State Historic Preservation Office, in conjunction with the National Park Service, encourage the conservation of North Carolina's historic resources. Owners and developers may potentially receive 20% federal income tax credit and a 15 to 25% state income tax credit for certified rehabilitations of income-producing historic structures. So she was interested in maybe the town getting involved with this and trying to identify some properties that could be recognized by the National Park Service as for historical preservation. And I have the flyer. I could print it all out for you later.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any comment on that?
I just have a question. How old is something to be historical?
Well, our town is
More than 50 years?
coming up on its 50th anniversary, and that's being done by our history committee, so that's probably a good thing.
And there's no building left.
I don't know.
Lannis Lodge, maybe?
I have children older than 50 years old.
Yes,
No comment.
yes, so
We'll take a look at it. Okay. Thank you. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you to those people who have sent in their comments. The next item is the consent agenda. And we'll go through them one by one as we usually do, and then just have one vote at the very end. Okay, the first item is the minutes from our last meeting on October 13th. Does anybody have any comments or suggested changes to those minutes? Okay. The next item is tax discoveries and releases. Is there anything anybody has any questions about or comments on?
I just have one question on page 4. I've noticed, I'm thinking this from a historical standpoint, as we get down through quite often, it says town staff submitted a letter. I mean, that's sort of a inanimate type of thing. Shouldn't it say town clerk, town planner or something? So there's some relationship to that. It's not Charlie, but it's how we quite often talk about staff rather than who did it. What's down at this particular one, and it's on the town manager, it says town manager, Brian, Living Shorelines, town staff submitted a letter of interest. It's either under the town manager or under the town planner or something, isn't it? Shouldn't it be more specific?
I think I said that because Brian wrote the letter. Yeah, edits from the town staff. That's why.
I'm more asking the question in general because I noticed we've been getting to different people saying staff has done this, staff has done that, but it doesn't say who. I would think from a minutes standpoint, when you read minutes, quite often it says, so who made the motion and who wrote the letter and the police chief did this and the.
I think we could be a little more specific.
Just so it means something more, that's all.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
All right, then there's nothing on tax discoveries and releases. We have an appointment for to be the new chairperson of the Parks and Recreation Committee. That is Cheryl Smith, who is currently a member of the Parks and Recreation Committee and has been for some years. And she is taking the place of Ron Pearson, who has been the chairman for 5 years. And I think Ron initially agreed to be the chairman for 1 year, but he wound up serving for a total of 5 years, and he has been an excellent chairman, especially through the trials and tribulations we had to go through in this pandemic period. So I want to thank you very much, Ron, for your service, and welcome Cheryl Smith on board if nobody has any objections to her appointment.
I move the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Next item on the agenda, and this is a new deal, this particular commission meeting, because we flipped the town manager and staff reports and new business to cover new business first. So we'll see how it goes tonight. The first item under new business is a budget amendment, and our assistant town manager and finance officer, Julie Anderson, will tee that one up for us.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. There are several items in this budget amendment that we're kind of tying up, and then we're going to, later on the agenda, we're going to discuss a couple other things that I don't have included in this. Will come on to a following budget amendment next month. But the highlights of this one include reinvestment of 3 CDs, and I want to explain that for a minute. 3 of our CDs, or the only 3 we have, were at Select Bank and Trust because they had the best interest rates. Select Bank and Trust was purchased by First Bank, and in that purchase process, they couldn't have any public funds. So they're refunding me my CDs, and then right now, interest rates are like point nothing, the term Brian and I like to use. So really, I'd be making just as much interest leaving it in First Citizens than being in a CD right now. So it's not hurting us in any way because interest rates are so low, but that's why there's such a large, there was 3 CDs at $100,000 each. So hopefully before the end of the fiscal year, if once the transition with First Bank, gets through, I can reinvest them if interest rates are worth reinvesting them. It's just it's a matter of diversifying where we have our money, and of course looking for good interest possibilities, but right now there aren't any. The other parts of this included some we had surplus sales and use tax in our last distribution and franchise tax from the end of last fiscal year. When we have a surplus on that last distribution, it comes to this fiscal year. So I've just adjusted the budget for this fiscal year for those things. Building permit revenue is still going crazy. So I've increased the estimate for that. Of course, I believe Brian had put this in an update that our insurance premiums for Blue Cross Blue Shield are going up, and that is effective December. I think, I forget exactly what the percentage of our increase was, but it was more than I budgeted. I think I budgeted a 13% increase and more than that. Sad to say. So there's that expense increase. Sidewalk feasibility study. It seems like it was several months ago, but it was really this fiscal year. We had the ladder repair and the engine repair. And we had, there was maintenance line budget because that was unexpected. I've just bumped that expense line up. And then the redesigns at the beach accesses and these entrances here, the stairs, and then security camera installation at the iron steamer. And that is what everything on here is.
Security camera at the iron steamer?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on this bill?
Question, Julie, what was the interest rate on the CDs?
It was less than 1%. I mean, it was, I think one of them was like 0.35. But it was really good for what compared to other ones. I mean, it's
as under the terms of the CDs, does the bank have the right to call it before the expiration of the term?
I think they do in the sales situation, in the acquisition situation where they had to, where First Bank was acquiring.
But is that part of the terms of our agreement with the bank? Maybe between the two banks.
Right. I would have to check.
It may be minimal dollars.
I didn't think that there was anyway, if the bank said they cannot hold, or, because of the acquisition or during that period, they weren't going to hold public funds in CDs, in time deposits, maybe. So I'd have to look. We have one more that, so he So far, they've refunded me 2. We have 3 there. The other one is coming up a little bit later before that he's going to refund me. So I'll look at the paperwork to be sure.
I'm just curious, otherwise potentially they could owe us interest into the expiration of the term of the CD.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Both of the 2 that I'm sorry, Larry, the 2 that they refunded me matured in October.
Okay, okay.
So I was rolling them over anyways.
He just, they
And so they were reaching maturity date in October, and then the third one hasn't matured yet.
Maybe they're waiting till it matures
yeah.
Yes,
to avoid that issue.
right.
I was just going to mention, Julie, I don't know if you're leaving them in just a floating interest, checking type account at this time instead of getting another CD. But CDs are available at 0.5% or higher now.
Not for public funds.
So you can't put public funds in them?
Can you,
Public funds are going to be a lower interest rate.
can you just open one of those online, savings accounts? Like, I think
Several.
Goldman
Capital.
Sachs has one.
Capital One.
One's got
Funds,
They're about 0.5%.
No.
yeah.
It has to be a North Carolina-based financial institution where we put our money. And generally speaking, the North Carolina Capital Management Trust, where I have the majority of our money, is a higher interest rate. Their interest rate too is below what this were.
Have to wait till acquisition is done, and then I'm sure they'll.
And then find,
then she'll be-
really, over the years, Sound Bank used to be one of the higher interest rate paying banks in the area for our public time deposits. Select Bank has beat them out over the last probably 3 or 4 years. They've been every time one comes up for maturity, I have Betty call around for interest rates, but public funds are much lower.
There's also what is this in North Carolina, Fifth Third, isn't that a North Carolina bank?
It should be. Mm-hmm. Yep. So.
Okay, all right, well, thank you, Julie. Can we have a motion to
I
approve?
move. Amendment number 3.
We've already voted on it. No, we haven't.
No.
So who's the
I'll
second?
make a motion, I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the budget amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item is the arborvitae and cedar drain lines, our discussions with the Department of Transportation. What to do with these 2 drain lines that seem to be caving in places.
Okay, Mayor and Commissioners and folks online, good evening. I'm on page 17 of the agenda packet. That's what I'm talking off of. This item is a recommendation to fund a joint project between us and the State Department of Transportation to address these 2 stormwater lines on Arborvitae and Cedar Road. So just some quick background. In the early 80s, the state widened Salter Path Road along just about all Bogue banks, including here. And included in this project was the installation of stormwater drains that run from the ditches right along the side of the road to the PKS Canal here in town. And I have 5 locations listed, but the 2 in italics are the 2 we're addressing tonight. And that's one from Salter Path Road running along the east side of Maritime Woods across Arborvitae Drive and then to the canal between 142 and 144 Arborvitae. And then further east in town along the west side of Cedar Road to the canal in between 107 and 109. So the existence of these lines came to the town's attention in recent times during the construction of the Mimosa Bridge in 2010. And that's when they were building the bridge, there's a collection vault just on the south side of where the bridge is that DOT ran into when putting in the bridge. And they went back to Greenville, looked at their plans and said, oh yeah, we have a stormwater line there. I don't think that's a mischaracterization. It surprised everyone, even DOT.
Well, our construction company ran into it. They hadn't identified it.
Right.
Okay.
But the DOT person we were dealing with, I promise you, it surprised him as much as anyone. They had to bring a old timer who'd been up in Greenville for years, and we found the plans. There's been no DOT maintenance done on this drain line system since at least 2007. That's when I arrived. And this was actually verified when we brought a stormwater rep from DOT. Bob Holman helped arrange that in from Raleigh in 2019. So the specific issue with these two is following Hurricane Florence, some substantial sinkholes appeared along the property lines of both locations, particularly bad on Arborvitae, where there were a series of sinkholes. And we did some camera work and showed that there were failures at the connections of the seams. There's simple concrete pipes, and at the seams of these pipes, there was leaking taking place. And in the camera work, you could actually see roots coming down into it, and that's where the leaking. And it's pretty clear, particularly at Russ Pagel and Mr. Bennett's place on Arborvitae, but at the other place as well on Cedar, that if we don't address these, they could affect the foundations of these homes. So the fly in the ointment here is that NCDOT did not require permanent easements for these lines. They acquired construction easements, but not permanent easements. And it appears that they used existing developers' drainage easements, which I'm told is common sometimes if they exist already. And these they simply put these lines where the developers' drainage easements were. And because they do not have permanent easements at these, DOT will not assume full responsibility for the maintenance and repairs. And this saga started with them saying, we won't do it. It kind of graduated to, we will split the cost with you, which is where we're at today. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So in the spring, this past spring, we were hoping to get it done prior to the hurricane season. We did not. We engaged with DOT and requested we restart things. They had their financial issue for a while, and this wasn't possible. They selected a contractor who proposed a project to sleeve these projects, which really means a pipe inside of a pipe. And this would be a polyurethane solution. So Sonny doesn't believe failure. It would fail, at least not like this, anytime during any of our lifetimes. And what DOT, there was a sequencing. They received a quote. It's in your agenda packet, and then negotiated that quote downward for the share between, and they're proposing a 50-50 share, and the cost to the town would be $40,303. So they've offered to be the project management there and take care of all the construction administration costs. The affected property owners would need to sign a right of entry agreement giving the department permission. It also would include and this is key, include a hold harmless clause stating that the property owners would not hold the department or its representatives responsible for loss, damage, or liability. And in addition, these agreements would specify that this is a one-time deal and that the department would not take responsibility for future maintenance of the easements or pipe systems. Our involvement in this would be dealing with the property owners specifically on these right of entry permits. So the lousy part in this, obviously, is that NCDOT put them in 40 years ago. They haven't maintained them. Nonetheless, as you see at the end, I'm going to recommend we move forward on this in the town on that $40,000. I talked to Neil at length. He's on, and I briefed him leading into tonight. The only way we could force in DOT to cover all of this would be to take him to court. It probably cost more to take him to court than to pay it. And he's not entirely sure we would have standing to do it. That it may be the citizens involved who would have to take DOT to court. And he also believes that there's a vested municipal interest as well as a state interest in doing this. So again, it's not ideal, but I think in the best interest of those property owners, I'd recommend we fund that $40,000 and get DOT to fix it this winter.
So originally DOT wasn't going to cover anything. I seem to remember we were thinking we were going to have to pay for it ourselves to start with.
Yes, initially, DOT's initial position was we don't have an easement, we're not responsible.
Okay.
And we're not covering it. And we've been after them for better part, really since Florence, but 2019 is when we started engaging with them. And that's when they came with the 50-50.
I have one question before we open it up for discussion here, and that is on this hold harmless clause. I mean, if we sign an agreement that holds DOT harmless for any future maintenance or repairs or anything like that, does that imply then that the town of Pine Hill Shores is automatically by default then the responsible party from here on out?
Mayor, this is
Neil.
and I want to speak to that for a moment because I've just highlighted that sentence about this being a one-time partnership and DOT will not be responsible for future maintenance. Mayor, quite frankly, I do share your concern, and I think that as long as DOT is putting water in that pipe, it needs to step up and honor a responsibility to make sure that its water is not damaging anybody's private property. And so if DOT has been saying this in the past, I've not been focused on it, but now that this statement is kind of on the table, I'm not sure. I agree with everything else in this proposal. I think it is a fair and reasonable way to address the problem. But I do not think that DOT should shift future maintenance responsibility for its water to either the town or these private property owners. And so I think we may yet have some work to do in convincing DOT that they need to strike this particular part of the concept. That's my 2 cents.
I mean, either that or I guess would it make sense for us to add a hold harmless clause for ourselves in there too? I mean, that doesn't really seem like a solution either, because then that just puts everything on the shoulders of the two homeowners. And well, there are more than two homeowners involved here, but on the shoulders of the homeowners for maintaining a Department of Transportation pipe. So I don't know.
Well, I can see some kind of hold harmless agreement from the owners. Well, I don't want to say with respect. I don't agree that the owners should be required to sign any kind of hold harmless agreement. This is not their doing. Right. Yes, they did buy their property subject to a drainage easement that's on the subdivision maps, but a drainage easement doesn't give a license to anybody to damage property that is outside of the drainage easement, if you will. And so I don't think that part of it is reasonable. And I think we should go back to DOT and say, look, we agree with everything else, but this business about hold harmless and one-time partnership for all time, no, as long as DOT water is going in that pipe, DOT has a responsibility to help maintain the pipe. And as we've discovered, I think you all know this, it's not just DOT water that's going into that pipe. There apparently is an inlet on Arborvitae that is bringing water from a municipal street into this pipe. And the owners of that the owners of the property subject to the drainage easement, they're not putting water in the pipe, but they're the ones that are being damaged by these breaches in the pipe that's causing the sinkhole. So I just think fair is fair.
We're putting water in the pipes and DOT is putting water in the pipes.
That is my understanding. Isn't that right, Brian?
That's my question.
Yes, I'd say easily a much greater percentage from the state, but we do have, there are inlets on the town right away as well.
20 or so. Yeah.
All right, Mayor, I
Okay.
think I got it pretty clear. Well, I'm sorry.
Neil, I have a question or two. Does DOT still maintain a drainage right away on that property? Or can we say, if you're not going to fix it, we're not going to let you use it?
Well, do they have to take the whole thing?
No, we don't want it out. We'll just make sure it doesn't sink anymore. Is that a possibility? I mean, is that a situation that could happen?
No.
Or not?
No.
Is that Larry Corsello speaking?
Yes.
You were breaking up a bit on my end, Larry. I actually am going to need for you to repeat it and see if I can get it all.
Can you hear me better now?
I can hear you.
Okay. What I'm asking is, if DOT currently have an ongoing drainage right on that property, so is that always there and they can always use that pipe regardless if it leaks or not? Or can we say, if it doesn't leak, I mean, if it leaks, you're not going to fix it in the future. If it leaks, then we're just going to close it off completely and prevent the problem from ever happening again. Do they have recourse to say, nope, you can't do that, we got the right to use it?
Didn't it make-
Now,
Well,
but
that is a complicated question, but let me say this. If I was the property owner and there was a pipe in a drainage easement, and I could trace that pipe to a highway maintained by the Department of Transportation and/or to a street maintained by municipal government, and that pipe was not being maintained, and it was causing a sinkhole and threatening the integrity of my property, then I would go to the governments that are involved with putting water in that pipe, and I would tell them that I'm going to give you a reasonable amount of time to come in here and maintain it, and if you don't do that, then I'm going to stop it up because I've got to protect my property. And then I think that that's going to force the governments to kind of step in and say, well, here's what our legal rights are. And I do not think that that legal right will be to use a drainage easement in such a fashion as to cause damage outside of the drainage easement. And so I think at that point, the local governments, not local governments, the state government, possibly a local government, will then have to decide, well, what are we going to do here? Are we going to go into a court and try to get some kind of injunction to keep the pipe from being, our pipe from being interfered with, our pipe that's leaking? I don't think the court system is going to be very kind and gentle to a government that would take that position. Now, all the governments could condemn an easement, but if they condemn an easement, they're gonna have to maintain it. And so, Larry, I think that to answer your question, if the governments don't step up and solve the problem, I believe that the property owners are going to be able to do what is necessary to protect their property. And if that means fill it in, that means fill it in. And then I'll guarantee you, DOT at least is going to say, well, wait a minute, you can't, we're going to back up water onto the Sauter Path Road or onto adjacent properties from the Sauter Path Road. We can't do that. And so I think that would bring it to a head, and we would be right back to where we are right now. And so I think that this is a reasonable approach to it, but I do not think that DOT should be requesting or expecting to be released from having to maintain something in the future when it is their water that we're dealing with.
I don't have I think most of us, I can't speak for the other commissioners right now, but I don't think we have a problem with the cost sharing of fixing this problem. I think that's a good deal all around for us and for the Department of Transportation, but I think it is just that old harmless business. Clerk.
Well, I think we have to get Brian Kramer to go back to DOT and says all of this is good except this this hold harmless is just not working, and just see if we can't get them to back off of that.
Is there a dash in hold harmless?
No.
Or perhaps our solicitor goes back to them.
Clerk.
I'd like to try to
Like a reasonable approach.
broader perspective, if I might. The town could easily block up its 2 drop inlets, not put any water into that with relatively little difficulty. I've been down that during a major storm, and the most water, any backup has been on the west side, that drop inlet by, I can't think of his name's house. And that could be blocked off, and the worst that it would do is flow on down Arborvitae and go off the sides of the road. So those could be blocked up any day we wanted to do that, and it would, without any serious effect on the town's stormwater flow. Okay. On the other hand, DOT put a pipe in for about 1,000 feet, 1,100 feet, through a bank off of Salter Path that's probably 15 to 20 feet high. So, and they've run it along the edge, as Ted knows, along the edge of Maritime Woods property line and the individual property, all the way down to Walter Guy's, that's the name, to Walter Guy's house. And there's a manhole along that property line, and then it does a right-hand turn across Arborvitae. But my point is the town could block its up and it wouldn't make any difference. Little difference, very little difference. Now, the one on Salter Path Road drains about by Pine Knoll Towns back towards Pine Knoll Boulevard. It drains on both sides of the road. There's a culvert that crosses there. It drains all that. And about 6 years ago, we were in a meeting here, and around 5 o'clock, there was a big downpour, and Salter Path Road was flooded because that got blocked off. And that kind of brought this to a head, so to speak, right?
That's involved. I mean, that's part of the puzzle. I mean, if we,
No, but that's,
we've had discussions of blocking it,
But that was the
But,
effect of that being blocked. It blocked it way out to 58.
Yes,
1,000 feet.
Ryan had to barricade Highway 58
yes.
with the ranch, so we essentially locked it down to one lane.
So I was just trying to deal with the town state combination. Yes, the town does put a little bit of water into it, but could clearly block it off and make it all state. I tend to agree with what Neil said, and now we're just talking about the arborvitae one, because I have some questions about the cedar one, but that's different, I think. I agree with both what the mayor said and what Neil said, but if nothing else, I don't have a problem with paying a portion of it, and the half is okay if we need to get it solved. But I think the part about whose responsibility it is or who put it in, the town doesn't want to own it for the next 100 years. It won't make any difference to me, obviously, but it's not. But I think we have a responsibility not to push that on down the road. That needs to get solved. And so I agree with Neil's concern about that very much. And but again, that's just on the arborvitae one. And I want to ask some questions about the other one later on, but is that okay?
Yeah, Larry, again. The harmed parties are the individuals with the property. And if there were to be a suit, they'd be the ones that would have to take it to the court.
Probably.
Do you think they could find an attorney that would say, yeah, the state should definitely be responsible for that, and I'll take your case on because we're going to win it, and I'll get my fees that way? Is that something they should look into?
Good luck.
If I thought that only the Department of Transportation would be named in that court action, then I might not be giving you my recommendation and advice. But I do not think the only party name would be the Department of Transportation. I believe that because town water is going into that pipe, the town will be pulled into it.
Good point.
The damage is already done.
I got a-
Done.
Yeah,
Save water.
I have a question. I think the contract is good, but I know Neil's brought up this one piece. We've been working on this forever. So how long, Brian, do you think this is going to hold us up? I mean, is it damaged to the point where we need to move forward and get it repaired?
I think we have this winter to fight it. I'm worried about the next storm, quite frankly.
That's what I was saying, yeah.
I think we need to do everything we can. I mean, I'll engage with DOT immediately and tell them I'll engage with them immediately and tell them we won't accept the hold harmless and the lack of future responsibility. So.
My opinion is we got to do something to it regardless of what DOT, because if DOT decides, like I said, I remember thinking that we were going to have to pay 100%. So now they're at 50-50. If they dig their heels in, we might have to consider just fixing it. And
What if we just give our manager the ability to negotiate
just
a
strike that.
price split similar to what we have here, only, on the stipulation that they get rid of the hold harmless and lack of responsibility for any future maintenance.
Do you think
Those
they
two
bring this
things.
back to us in December, or do you think they're
I'll
going to be slow with
I'll
it?
definitely have DOT's response by December.
All right,
I don't
that was
think we'll
my
have it solved
question.
by December.
All right, that was my question. I think that's a
Bill and
way
then Clark.
forward.
Sorry.
Brian, are you dealing with an attorney for DOT or strictly dealing with personnel, lower management of some sort?
The staff PEs, Preston Hunter, who wrote that
Okay.
statement in there and
I'd suggest that if necessary, you get Neil involved to put some legal language, in the response.
that's what I will do is call Mary Beth Houston, the Division II deputy engineer, can't recall her title, and I'll tell her our position. But when we go to them, because we've heard from the Division II engineer, his comments are in there. When we go to them, I think I know we are going to need Neil's help in that, no question about it.
Thanks for the work, though. That's a lot.
This is Ted. I agree that that's a reasonable approach. Let's
Clerk and
we can, if we can know it by December, it's going to make that much difference, I don't think.
The one on
Let's-
Cedar doesn't.
Let's table it to December.
I need to verify that, Clark. My recollection is they do not have permanent easements on either of those, but I will need to check.
We're doing half or both, right?
So the hold harmless would cover
That
Cedar
deepens
too.
the issue significantly.
Do we put water in that one?
There's not drop inlets. There's a short answer is yes, we have many times. There's not a drop inlet
Oh, no.
like there is,
They put a pipe.
but on many storms, Sunny has a pump, the worst of storms, when it goes all the way, we've put a
Drain.
pump into that manhole cover to go to the canal right next to Mr. Gould's.
Fix it, yeah.
I have,
Wait a minute. Did you want to have more on?
Well, I
Cedar?
wanted to finish up from the last time, but that's okay. Go ahead.
I have a question I think the board should address at this time, and that is in dealing with DOT, do we want to have an option? Are we amenable to an option that would say going forward, they and we will take care of this 50/50?
It would,
Well, it would only be on the parts that that aren't covered by an easement, basically.
Yes.
On the homeowner's properties, but we wouldn't want to cover the whole 1,100 feet of it.
DOT, I don't know if they'll be ready to do that, but. Good call.
One of the I think it's curious what happened with the one on Cedar backing up, because the one on Arborvitae backed up because there was a backflow on it that has since the problem's is not on it any longer, correct?
Correct. Up until 2 years ago, the one on Arborvitae was blocked.
It had a
With it.
backflow thing, so salt water wouldn't go up.
Right. The one on Cedar, it was just an open pipe. There was no.
So that has much less problem of sand going, penetrating it, correct?
Well, I had the same leaking issues with the roots and all that
Oh, okay,
business.
but-
Yeah, we had them both cambered and they both had issues.
Okay, but does it have cave-ins like the other one has? The same amount?
No, there was one specific area on the Arborvitae line that had a very significant cave-in, if you
It's a
will.
deep hole.
Right.
So
And I might add, since I've been here, we brought them out pre-Florence to address. Russ Pegel will tell you, Clark, I know you've talked to him. They've been out there about 11 years ago and did kind of a Band-Aid fix to the one on Arborvitae.
Mhm.
Sonny has the term, I can't recall it, but but it didn't work. It didn't, the collapse came right through.
the thing that's curious is that easy for either one going into the canal. I think that's curious in itself.
I need to check on the Cedar one. I had that answer
If
at
they
one
don't.
point and I don't off the top of my head. Just one thing I want to point out to the board. So what DOT did, and I think our action kind of preempted this, they have 6 of these issues in our immediate area, a couple in Havelock, and I cannot recall the other locations. And they went out and contracted with this outfit on a standby contract that I think lasts for 1 year. And they signed it in July of 21. So, that might be a time constraint that we have to try to reach agreement with them prior to July. Again, I want to have it prior to the summer, prior to the next storm season. So,
Well,
Yeah.
Mayor, the recommendation in the agenda is to authorize the town manager to sign an agreement with NCDOT to execute the project. And I think that the board should go ahead and approve that on the condition that the hold harmless provision and the one-time partnership issues be removed from any agreement. And that way, if Brian can work this out, we can go ahead and execute the contract and get it done and not, and then just come back with a report to you that it is done rather than have to come back and get permission all over again. So I think the board should go ahead and move on to approve this, but put the condition just stated.
I move that.
I think that makes excellent sense. I think DOT probably wants to solve this as much as we do, and that'll give Brian just a little bit more negotiating room, I think, maybe. So I think that's a great idea, Neil.
We have a motion on the floor to do exactly what Neil just recommended. I would add to that an element of a future partnership, with the town and DOT. What kind of partnership we would have in the future is something I think would be discussed on a case-by-case basis, but that we would work with DOT in partnership with DOT on future maintenance.
Of these two lines.
Those two lines, yes. Larry.
Neil, if we go ahead and do it and they leave that clause in there, then we're just basically where we are right now before anything happening. But it's been a lot of years before it became a problem. In theory, if they fix the pipe correctly, it could be decades before it becomes an issue again. And maybe that's why I don't know, maybe you can convince them that way that they shouldn't worry about taking care of it in the future if they fix it right. I don't know.
I just have one further comment that perhaps is some ammunition you can use. Seems to me that if DOT came out 11 years ago, or whenever it was, and did some repairs on this section, which they say they had no responsibility for, perhaps they've taken on responsibility already because they already did it.
Good point. Yeah, we need to talk.
Brian can point that out when he's talking to DOT. But it's largely their water. I just cannot see how they can look at these property owners and say, we've got no responsibility for it. That just doesn't even make sense to me.
And if there was a problem 11 years ago and they just did a Band-Aid fix, that probably exacerbated the problem because it wasn't done correctly then.
Well, everybody needs to remember that these drainage systems don't last forever.
Right.
And this one apparently has lasted 40 years or close to it. So if you only have to deal with it every 40 years or so, well, that's probably just the way it is.
We have another 1,000 feet of this pipeline that
Yes,
is just
But they're responsible
an
for
accident
that.
waiting to happen.
But they're responsible for that.
They're responsible for
Yeah,
that.
they're
Okay.
responsible.
Well, we have a motion on the floor with a minor amendment about the partnership
Striking.
going forward, I think. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Bill?
I'm not so sure we should at this point be agreeing to a future partnership.
I agree, Bill.
Yeah, I don't think we should do.
Well, I don't think the motion agrees to a future partnership. All it does is strikes out what's here in the memo. And the future is the future. And we can talk about it, but I look at this as the board is not necessarily authorizing a future partnership. It's just getting past this current problem.
And I think removing the hold harmless and the future responsibility de facto
Makes a
makes
partnership.
it
To our grandkids. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're moving it to our grandkids and our great grandkids. That's right.
Okay, with that understanding, there any more discussion?
Are you withdrawing your request?
I am withdrawing.
The request for partnership. Okay.
Yes.
We just have to get the C1 documented, that's the same situation.
Right. Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. There. That was a tough one. But I think we're on the right path here. So thank you very much. The next item is a recommendation to approve the Pine Shores solid waste contract with waste removal. We've been talking about this for a number of months now, but I'll let Brian introduce this one and summarize it.
So of course, last month, the board selected Waste Removal as the winning bidder for our solid waste services, and they're scheduled to start in January. Just a couple of highlights from the contract, and I might add Neil drafted this contract. And it was part of the RFP. We've made some minor adjustments since we selected Waste Removal, but the highlights is, first of all, it's the same service schedule as we've had in the past with GFL as far as the vast majority of our citizens getting serviced on Monday. But just highlighting a couple of things, and this is new. The contract provides for penalties toward the contractor for poor service. It's a 5-year term. We do not have any renewals in place in this. The contract does include, of course, the prices from the bid competition. We will keep the services at Town Hall, the convenience site at Town Hall, open 24/7, 365. We're playing with the idea, just as an aside, of replacing the 21. It's a different count every time Julie goes out there, but there's 21 recycle carts out there. We're toying with the idea of putting a 30-yard recycle dumpster out there, roll on, roll off, which Dave Duffy from Waste Removal thinks will help us, because we've had some issues with them being full on weekends. Of course, bulk waste and white goods stays the same. Contracts with GFL, this was a major issue. Contracts with GFL for rental of equipment will be grandfathered and allowed to continue until expiration. However, since I've wrote this memo, GFL is going to meet with me next week and provide me, and they wouldn't give us this during the bidding portion. They're going to provide me the names and the terms of all the individuals that they have rental agreements, and they're agreeable to terminating the contract with all those folks so that they can pick up with GFL, or excuse me, with and the rental agreements are better with Waste Removal than they were with GFL. So, we discovered during this whole evolution this summer that a lot of folks don't know that they have rental agreements with GFL. So we'll have to get the word out on that. And then, of course, Neil ensured that all insurance is addressed. And Neil added it was his suggestion. We were concerned this would drive up the bid, and it did, but we have a performance bond included in here. We did not previously have a performance bond with GFL. So the contract's in there, and with Neil's help, we'll answer any questions on the contract, Mayor, but recommending we approve it.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Bill?
My only question is with respect to the liquidated damages, penalties, and so forth. It's referenced on page 37 of our packet, and it's section 22.3.1. It apparently is incorporating the RFP into this contract. I don't think I've seen the RFP, so I don't know what those penalties and costs are. Has anybody else seen them other than perhaps you, Brian?
I have not. I can't. Boy, I don't know if I put it in front of the board, but I can tell you they're substantial enough to force them to do their job right. But I don't have the numbers in front of me.
What triggers the penalties?
For instance, if we have, I'm using the experience of this summer, cans are left lying all over Oak Leaf, not from wind, but from being dropped. we'd photograph that. We would record it and we would send it to, we would forward that to waste removal. And I plan on being reasonable in the very beginning with some warnings at first, but we have, we'll absolutely have the option to do that. But to answer your question, would trigger it was us recording it, filing the complaint with waste removal, and then applying it on our next invoice.
Well, but how do you determine the penalty?
Because we have very specific penalties and dollar amounts for missed services, damaged cans, all those types of
I guess
things.
that's what I was asking.
But it's a chart of
Well, this is Neil, and I'm trying to get to it as quickly as I can, but it's taking me a while. Let me see if I can, if you'll give me just another.
Julie's going to grab it, Neil.
So just to add on to his question, so do you have to like notify them 3 times before you kick
No,
in the
there's
penalty?
there's no
Okay.
first time warning and all that business in there.
It's a negotiated outcome. I mean, back and forth. I mean, it's got to be that. I like, while we're waiting for Julie, the idea of the rental equipment continue to expiration. It is a little crazy because the annual rental cost for a GFL 90-gallon waste can is about the same as what it costs if you buy one. So, it's really better for both homeowners, I think, if they go out and buy their own.
That number's down to about 60.
Is it?
Remember a few years ago when we started, particularly on the recycling cans, when Ken and Sarah were pushing that, we made that deal with Ace Hardware in Atlantic Beach. I think a lot of folks purchased 95-gallon cans as well for garbage.
Yeah.
While Julie's looking for it, I have another concern. That's on the same page, but it's section 22.4, the order of precedence. The RFP looks to be last in line as far as what documents control. And before that, it says the cost fee proposal submitted by the contractor with his proposal shall supersede the RFP. So I'm not sure just here where we're going to fall in line. I would rather like to see those penalties right in this contract. So there's no doubt as to what they are, and they can't be superseded by another document. That's just a concern I have. Not seeing all the documents.
I'm confident that waste removal would not have an issue to add the penalties to this.
Well, if I can, so I'm not sure because I was looking through that, if I heard everything that, but section 22.3, it says all provisions of the request for proposal, all addenda, all attachments thereto are part of this contract, while all the provisions of the request for proposal are incorporated herein. Special attention is called to liquidated damages and the performance bond, which are sections of the article.
Right, but the next paragraph, the order of precedence, is where I've got a little concern, not having seen the proposal coming from the contractor, not having seen the RFP.
Understand
Rather than reference RFP, I'd like to see the damages right in this contract as part of this contract and not subject to something else.
Know that we have, in working with both of these documents for so long, I really don't think we have any inconsistencies between the two, because we've got the, we kind of squared that away. We made some revisions to the contract. Neil might be able to help us out with that order of precedence paragraph. But in the meantime, this is, I can show you, I'm gonna show you. So this is the chart of liquidated damages. So it's a number, a series. No, this is fire rep, sorry, I just had to time.
Who's the guy? Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
But, so it's, I was.
I'm sorry.
Down the line. So see, it's, if this isn't done, that's your damages. And if that's happens, that's the damages. That's what's.
Familiar with the RFP.
Mayor, this is Neil, and here's what I think we ought to do to move past this issue. I believe that Julie is probably showing you the liquidated damage cost schedule that itemizes 17, yes, it itemizes 17 separate failures that get different liquidated damages. For example, collection of any materials before 7 in the morning or after 6:30 in the evening is $100 for the first incident and $200 per incident for every incident thereafter in any 30-day period. And then again, there are 17 different categories that will merit liquidated damages. I think that the way to get past this is to do what Commissioner Connect is saying. I think pretty easily can simply move that schedule into the contract. It takes up 2 pages, but that's not a problem.
Again, I don't think waste removal will have an issue with that.
Okay.
So I guess I'll make a motion to accept the contract with the schedule moved into that section 22.3
I can make it an attachment.
attachment, make it as an addendum attachment into the,
Like these other ones, like, you know, the map is attachment D, the cost proposal is attachment D. That will be.
so just the liquidated damage and cost table.
Yeah.
Got it. All right, that's my motion.
Okay, so we're going to authorize the town manager to sign it on the town's behalf with that addition.
Mhm.
And I will second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the solid waste contract, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, next item is the UDO consultant, Unified Development Ordinance Consultant Contract. And we're going to have Kevin Reed lead us through that one, please. Kevin, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Commissioners, and everyone else participating in the meeting tonight. Just to recap a few events to let you know how we got to the point tonight. At the Board of Commissioners August 11th meeting, the board appointed a UDO review team that consisted of Commissioner Edwards, Town Manager Kramer, Planning Board Member Rzuski, and myself. And following that appointment, we put out a RFP for consultant services on September 3rd to create a UDO for the town of Pine Knoll Shores. The responses to the RFP were due on September 24th, and we received a total of 4 responses. The UDO review team reviewed those 4 responses, and based on that, chose 2 firms to further interview and talk about how they might approach the project for Pine Knoll Shores. Based on the interview results, the UDO review team recommended that an agreement be signed with InFocus consulting firm. InFocus has a considerable amount of experience in North Carolina, particularly working with communities of all sizes on UDOs and various development regulation formulation. InFocus presented a draft agreement to the town on November 1st with a projected cost of $56,405 and an anticipated completion date in the fall of 2022. Total cost for the project for current fiscal year would be $48,000, and in the next fiscal year, approximately $8,405. The town attorney has reviewed the draft agreement, and one suggestion that did come from Neil is that the payment schedule that is set forth on page 4 be tied to some deliverables. Staff has discussed that concept with the manager and the chief operating officer of InFocus, and we are going to work to tie the payment schedule to project milestones that are acceptable to both parties. So tonight, what we're asking the Board of Commissioners to do is to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement with InFocus, with the understanding that the payment schedule and milestone details will be finalized by the town and InFocus staff prior to the signing of the execution of the agreement. Glad we've got to this point. Look forward to potentially working with InFocus, the planning board, and obviously the Board of Commissioners in the town on this project. Be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have at this point.
Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner.
I would just like to point out the way I'm reading this is that the contractor will prepare the initial draft of a UDO, and then there'll be a final proposed UDO prepared. And if the planning board recommends approval of that UDO, when it comes to us as the commissioners, if we make changes, the way I read this, we're going to be paying $150 an hour for any modified changes. That appears on page 4 of the 7 pages in paragraph G. I'm not so sure we should be paying for additional changes unless we are all going to be present at the planning committee meeting and see what they're willing to approve. Because we won't make any changes after planning committee, we're going to pay extra.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Kmek, I would imagine a couple things. One, at the very outset of the project, there would be a joint meeting with the consultant and the planning board and the board of commissioners. And I would expect that the town would not accept a final UDO until all parties, being the planning board and the board of commissioners, are comfortable with the draft that's going to move forward ultimately for adoption.
I agree with that, but the way this is written, if the planning board recommends and we see something later that we want to make a change on, we're going to pay extra. Just want that noted, under this agreement.
I think in the contract, they're probably putting that in there to make sure that we do work together with the planning board that as this process comes.
I think we're assuming that we're going to have plenty of opportunities to comment on this before it even gets to a final point. Is that correct, Kevin?
I would, yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I would anticipate there very much to be involvement not only with the staff and the consultant, but with the planning board and the board of commissioners on the project to get it to a draft state.
And then if after everything is all said and done, we then have some light bulbs go off that require future changes, we'll have to pay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I want that just noted, that's.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Right.
Commissioner Durham.
So we sat in a meeting here not too long ago and Neil briefed us on bad UDOs and good UDOs. Kevin, was this one fully vetted and you saw some good products come out for a town our size?
I did. Thanks to the fact that this firm has done a lot of work, I was able to look at a number of projects, including one that they're working on currently, right down the island, so to speak. This consulting firm is engaged with the town of Emerald and working with their DEO. And I can't speak for the other members of the selection team, but certainly based on the work that we did as a team, we felt very strongly about In Focus. And I feel very comfortable in the conversations I've had with folks that have worked with them and are currently working with them, that we've made a good choice here in recommending this firm to the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards.
I would say clearly, being at the meeting, it was a clear difference between the two, like far superior to the other. And that, right in that domain you're talking about.
If there are no more comments, I'd entertain a motion to approve the UDO contract.
I'll make a motion to approve the UDO contract.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Next item
Thank you.
is the Station Club contract for the folding and mailing of the shoreline every month. Town Manager Kramer, please.
Okay, this contract is for significantly less financial considerations than anything else we've discussed, but it's a contract nonetheless, and I didn't want to sign contract with that board. So very quickly, we've worked with the Station Club for decades. There's a flagpole out there dedicated to Betty Carr's husband, dated 1997. So at least since then, the Station Club was run by Carabel out of Hubert National Organization. They turned over management to Easter Seals, and Easter Seals wanted to have a contract in place, and should be, because their members, as they call them, folks with some learning disabilities, should be paid minimum wage. So anyway, the contract puts that in place. Melissa, Neil's colleague, drafted it for us. It's pretty straightforward. We pay minimum wage. The task estimate is 45 hours, I believe, 45 hours a month. So
The new one.
if the board will approve this, we may not have to have another folding exercise with Larry and John and the staff
I'm
again.
sure Larry did great.
So,
How many hours do you think we spent?
we spent 8 hours with, 3 hours with 8 people, so 24 man hours.
You guys are fast.
I know.
Yeah, well, we were. But
All right.
the board will approve this. And just one caveat, the manager of the station club, the new Easter Seals manager, is kind of interim there. Her full-time position is in Little Washington. She's hard as heck to get a hold of and answer emails and such. She's run this up her flagpole to Easter Seals Raleigh, and I haven't heard anything back other than her saying they're okay with it. But if there's any significant changes, meaning financial mainly, I won't sign it, and I'll come back to you, and we will have a folding party in a couple weeks. But
Which you're not looking forward to, I assume. I'll make a motion and we approve the contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Commissioner Edwards, or by Commissioner Gotzinger, and second by Commissioner Edwards. Is there any further discussion or questions? All those in favor, say aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. The next item is the criminal code changes. And here we have a number of proposals to adjust our ordinances to allow us to impose criminal penalties for infraction. Town manager, would you please introduce this for us?
Mayor, Commissioners, in September, session law, this past September, session law was passed. And what it effectively said was no section of your code can be enforced criminally unless the code books specifically say so, say it can. And I think this was done mainly to prevent regulation against development. That's the flavor of it. If you read Melissa's excellent memo, that's what seems to be what they're trying to prevent, criminal charges for issues related to development. So and then they said you have to have this approved by 1 December. And you have to have 2 readings. So I'm not asking for approval for this tonight, but I want to introduce it. So maybe we can have a special meeting prior to 1 December and finally approve it. What I wanted to tell you about not reading what's in the memo is we got together, the staff got together, myself, Sonny, Ryan, and Jason.
No, I just been 15 minutes.
And this is what we picked out. This is what I wanted the board to know. And it's in there, but it's kind of hard to read because it's in legalese. We want to be able to enforce Section 6 regarding animals at large and on the beach strand. We want to be able to criminally enforce, and these are important public safety ones, fire prevention, general safety requirements, which is in Section 26, which includes hindering of the operations of the fire department, passageways in public places, and bonfires and outdoor fires. For health and sanitation specifically, we wanted to be able to criminally enforce issues with privies and septic tanks and sewage treatment plants. In Section 38, and Ryan drove these home, this is all based on issues we've had in the past. And most of the criminal penalties, as you saw in there, are misdemeanors, but nonetheless, they're criminal penalties. Peddling and soliciting, disorderly conduct, loud noise, regulation of firearms, accumulation of hazardous material, and non-payment of taxi cab fares. Let Ryan comment on the why we need to do that. But again, seriously, it's based on issues we've had in the past. Regarding section 46, public property, beaches and dunes, the beach bulldozing issue, and also dune protection would be important. Under section 54, the utilities, there's a section, this is our water ordinance, if you would. There's a section in there about, and we have had these issues in the past, tampering with water devices. And under waterways and the coast, and mainly bulkheads and canal front and ocean front, some building restrictions there, i.e. docks, bulkheads, and such as that. So that was a good scrub, I thought, by the staff. We'll undoubtedly 8 years ago say, man, I wish we had this one too, but you can't just carte blanche and say all of them.
Everything.
Do we have to have a public hearing before we approve these?
Let me read it, but I thought it was 2 readings. I didn't see anything from Melissa.
Yeah,
Remember
this
that?
is Neil. There's no requirement for a public hearing.
So we should schedule a public hearing tonight?
No, there is no requirement.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you correctly.
Second meeting.
So I'll be either, I mean, the December meeting is the 8th. And I think Melissa said we could just wait till December 8th, and depending on schedules, maybe we will. But at a very close future meeting, I'll be asking us to approve what Melissa wrote up.
One other meeting.
I thought I heard you say, though, it has to be approved by.
Well,
December
yeah, I
1st.
mistook. We have to have this first action by 1 December,
Which we've done.
which we've done tonight.
Second action doesn't have to be?
Yes, if you look at Melissa's standby,
It's gonna use a forest moderator.
In here.
This applies to incidents that happen after December 1st.
The mayor and commissioner, by waiting till December 8th, there'll be 8 days in December where if there is a violation of the ordinance, you couldn't enforce it with criminal penalties. So there's an 8-day gap there. But let me say this. We've known for 25 or 30 years that the courts do not like to enforce local ordinances through the criminal courts. And we very rarely take a violation into criminal courts because of that. It's very, very rare. The way this session law is written, I'm honestly not certain we could ever really enforce a violation unless there are a continuing series of violations on more than one day. And there's this strange provision in this session law that reads, and I'm going to quote, "A person may not be found responsible or guilty of a local ordinance violation punishable pursuant to this section if, when tried for that violation, the person produces proof of compliance with the local ordinance through any of the following. Number 1, no new alleged violations of the local ordinance within 30 days from the date of the initial alleged violation." So that's number 1. Number 2 deals with the alleged violator having some kind of underlying factor related to unemployment, homelessness, mental health, or substance abuse that caused or contributed to the violation. So we're so rarely going to be involved in number 2 as to hardly even think about it. But number 1 is that's the strangest thing I've ever seen. It apparently means that the violator has got to violate the ordinance on 2 separate occasions within 30 days. I've just never seen anything like that. But look, it is what it is. This is a law of the state of North Carolina now. So
Bill, you're right. and it was an email that I received from Melissa. It wasn't in there, that if we take this first action tonight, we can take the following action after 1 December.
December.
I think we're probably pretty safe in waiting
Yeah, I
December
don't,
8th.
yeah, I don't think it
know how many
matters.
infractions we'll have in that 8-day period of time. Let's hope there are.
Won't make any difference anyways.
They have to be two, right?
Okay.
And they can't be alcohol and related.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
No, no motion.
Tonight, we're not asking
Okay.
for approval tonight. Okay. Then I guess we're moving on. We have now finished new business
Woohoo.
for this meeting in an hour and a half. And we now are up to our town manager and staff reports. So it's up to them to
Keep
get
it
us
short.
to adjournment in a reasonable period of time. And at that point, I'll turn it over to the town manager for his report.
I got questions. No, I'm just kidding.
First one is a good news one, and that is the excess FEMA funds. The Environmental and Historic Preservation Review, the EHP review that we've been talking about forever is over, and we're in a 30-day public notice period. So hopeful that the funds will be available by Christmas. I'm gauging that off the 30-day public review that we needed to do for the larger beach project. So we potentially are going to have a really, really busy next year, because if we get these funds executed, strike that, if we get these funds obligated to us in December or January, then that's going to be a whole lot of financial activity coinciding with our regular budget planning. So just make you aware of all that. So the staff has been warned, all that, start contacting contractors, purchase agents and such, because remember, Julie's told us all these federally funded purchases and expenditures have to go through federal uniform guidance procedures. So anyway, that's good news.
Brian, before you move on, was there anything on our request that was not approved as far as use of the funds?
No, nothing I know of.
Okay.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah.
So moving on, state funding for stormwater projects. So 2 weeks ago, Clerk, John, Sonny, and I met with the Coastal Federation. The Land and Water Fund, which was formerly the Clean Water Trust Fund, which gave us a grant for phase 2, in the pending budget, emphasize pending, we all know that's not a done deal in Raleigh, has $20 million targeted towards stormwater and coastal resiliency type projects. And they're, we being Clark and I and John, just wanted to tell the rest of the team at the possibility of a phase 3 project. And the phase 3 project would include that project in Laurel and Myrtle that we approached the foundation about 3 or 4 months ago and did not get approved for that. And also the extension of the existing phase 2 line to Willow, and possibly, and this is a new angle for the full board, possibly all the way to Holly. And Clark, I talked to one of the 2 neighbors about the line going to Holly, and we need to get out there. I told her we would. So just want to give the board a heads up. The applications would be due in February. So, going to be a busy December and January. So probably at the January meeting, I'd be, I normally request board authorization to request these grants. If we were to get the grants, and Coastal Federation is very optimistic on these because they have good luck with Clean Water Trust Fund. Now the Land and Water Fund. The application is in February, grant awards in September of 22. So this would be a project for next FY. The BRIC grant, the BRIC letter of interest to get the brick grant. Did not have luck with that. We were not selected to go forward to the next round of culling before the state of North Carolina said it to the federal government. The main issues, I had an after action with them to find out, hey, what would they not like in it? Was I need to emphasize, if we choose to do this again, we need to emphasize the protection of not only public, private property, which is clear on Oak Leaf, on the Oak Leaf properties, but the protection of public property as well. And there's at least one area that's a special flood hazard area that would affect the road and 2 public utilities, our water mains and our and the electric utilities. So might need to emphasize that more. And they had 2 PEs on the panel who wanted to see more data, more scientific emphasis on the effectiveness of this. So I've told that to the Coastal Federation. And of course, they told us you were real close, but I don't know if they say that to everyone.
Yeah.
They told us to apply next year as well. And next year would be next July. So that'll be here real fast. So this gets a little confusing because there's so much funding for this kind of stuff in the pending budget. Also spoke to Todd Miller, the director of the Coastal Federation. There is $2 million in the pending budget specifically earmarked specifically for living shoreline. And the Coastal Federation thinks a portion, maybe not all, but a portion of our conceptual project would be eligible for this. So that application would also be due in in February, and potential if we think it's right and the match is right. And the board consideration I know last time was that the local match be borne by the Soundfront homeowners. That's the feedback I got from y'all. So that's the approach I would take going into that. So just want to make the board aware. We've got $20 million for the Land and Water Fund. That's general stormwater things. We've got $2 million for specifically for living shoreline. The Coastal Federation was kind of excited about our projects. They were disappointed we didn't get it.
The 2 million is for the state as a whole?
Yes. And I asked them, do you need to spread that from
Section.
Elizabeth City? And technically they do, but they like our project.
But I mean, realistically, how much, I'm thinking of the time and effort we put into applying for these grants. And, we want to put more time and effort in on the ones where we think we're going to get more money. I would think.
Right.
Yeah.
I personally think that the Land and Water Fund, stormwater projects hold more promise because they like to see phased projects, and we already have a successful phase 2. But
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't apply for this, but I mean, I'd say if we get 100,000, then that's fewer than 10 living shorelines, right? Or, I mean, weren't
We could
talking
pick
about
we'd have to pick a
$12,000?
section, yeah.
$100, $150 a foot.
Yeah.
Pick a section and just do a little
Right.
section, yeah.
But anyway, if we think we can do it, we'll do it.
Yeah.
We're not making a decision tonight anyway,
Right.
so.
yeah, none of these items on my update are decision items. I want to talk very quickly about the PSD outbuilding, Sonny's building. So this is part of the FEMA excess funds. And just very quickly, remember fire trucks, roofs here, and at the PSB, radios, generators, storm debris clearing equipment, a new backhoe for Sonny, which shelf life of that thing's starting to fade now. The question is where it belongs. What held up this, by the way, was this one singular item on this list because this one singular item required that EHP review. So we have two options as far as where we put that. If we want to put it, and this is really the only option we have on this campus here, and that is one on the dog park, you know, physically where you see the dog park. Clerk, Sunny and I measured it. It'd be pretty much that same north-south axis. Or we look at that Beacons Reach option that I mentioned a couple meetings back, where we approach Beacons Reach and ask them to go in 100 feet and maybe do a land swap of giving them 100 feet further to the west. I just want to make the board aware that we need to finalize a decision on this probably in the January timeframe on what we want to do, because both of them have issues. If we go on top of the dog park, it would entail not only disassembling the dog park, not a big deal on that, but that's where our septic system is. So we would pull up the septic field. We'd have a new septic field. We believe we have a location for that and presumably new lines. And that, you know, that would be costly.
Yeah.
There would be a cost to that, I should say. And if we move into the Beacons Reach area, it's wet. And we would need, now there are ways to get around that. We could have a raised slab, and perhaps they could engineer drainage under it. But just want to put the board on notice that we got to slap the table that early next year. Yes.
Can I point out a part that you didn't mention about the leach field? That leach field has been affected starting 15 years ago with fire trucks and everything being parked on it. So the length of that, the longevity of that leach field is not like it would be at your house when you knew you didn't drive on it or do anything. And it certainly is a improved resiliency issue if you fix it finally, you know, because it was patched before, so.
I don't own a dog, but I have to ask, would the dog park just disappear at that point?
What I would recommend, if we do put it where the dog park is, then that we do, and I see this different as a building, that we do approach Beacons Reach.
Yeah.
And we have that dog park back there in that area.
Or put it on top of the new leach field?
Well, that new leach field is going to be like in front of the Veterans Park men's, bathroom.
Right.
And, potentially that'd be a better dog park, because our present dog park is on top of a leach field, and it gets, no odor issues or anything like that. There's plenty of bugs. There'd be bugs anywhere back there. But that's what I would recommend. The dog park's popular.
It could be pushed out back too, the side of the building.
I think there's options on the dog park.
Just curious.
So, two quick ones just to let you know, two projects that we're working on right now. The Beechwood Repaving project, we've got a quote, and the Salter Path water main. I spoke to the engineers today. I'm expecting a proposal maybe Friday or Monday, strike that. And also the History Committee and the park are ramping up planning for the PKS 50th. And the reason we're ramping up, it's not till 2023, but there will be some budget implications that we'll be talking about in February, March for that event. And lastly, it's not on here. In addition to today being the Marine Corps birthday, Julie turns 29 today. Happy birthday. Happy birthday
To you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Julie. Woo. Happy birthday to you.
My time.
Okay. All right, thank you, Manager Kramer. Next up is.
I just wanted to mention something to Brian about the outbuilding.
Yes.
If you're going to approach Beacons Reach, as far as their meeting schedule, they only meet quarterly. Their next meeting is November 19th, and then they will meet the third Friday in February, third Friday in May. And so,
For planning purposes.
so just,
Right.
not likely you're going to get a special meeting with them for 13 people just for something like this.
Commissioner Edwards.
I would only like to point out, I realize it went over rather quickly on the 50th thing. We need to at least collectively agree to either give some money to that or not, because, and I know you said February and March, but people volunteering to be on a committee, if they've got to sell egg salad sandwiches or whatever to have it do it, they're not as eager to do it as if the town is committed to have some upfront money for t-shirts and stuff like that.
We bumped up the history committee for the panel extension, the t-shirts, and some updates they're doing to some document.
But that was only $1,000, right?
4,000.
Oh, okay. All right. So
That'll tide us over till February.
that's since last week then.
Okay.
No, that was in the budget, right?
I'm not, I can't remember. You asked me last, I can't remember what their budget is this year. You asked me last week.
The regular budget is 1,000, we gave you 3,000 extra. We gave them
Okay, I mean, we came up with the last meeting I was at. That's why
Right. But
They may not be.
I
aware.
remember when we did that.
There were some things, because Susan Phillips and I talked during budget season, and there was the timing of some things were coming in the next fiscal year, not this one. So we kind of,
but they're trying to get volunteers to chair some of the committees. And if they think something to volunteer to do, they will. If they don't,
Well, I've told in the meetings I've chaired so far, and by the way, I'm looking for someone that wants to run all of this, but
it would help.
I told them just based on our budget discussions last March, that I think the board was favorably inclined to fund an event.
Yes.
I'm just trying to support it. That's because one of these panels is like $900.
We have agreement that the board will support the 50th anniversary.
oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Of course. Okay. Assistant Town Manager and Finance Officer Julie, please.
Thank you so much. Okay, so first item, Brian sent an email out yesterday regarding our workers' compensation insurance audit. And I was just going to make the board and the public aware, this is an annual audit that I go through because I don't have enough of them. So it involves quite a bit of paperwork type stuff. So he came yesterday. Apparently we're on some of the years that I've done them, they've allowed me to do a self audit. And I guess it just depends. We're right on the verge of the size. So he was telling me yesterday before he left that he was here for a few hours, that we might be able to do a self audit again next year, which is not any less work. It's just he doesn't come here to look it over. I send it into them. But anyways, it compares the salary estimates that I provide when I send in our renewals. So when I send in our workers' comp renewals by type of employee, I send in what I think our salary estimates will be for the following year. And so then what he does is he comes in and then sees, okay, did you really pay the people what you said you were paying them, or do we have more of an exposure? And then the other part of it is our contractors. So anyone who does work for us, physical work for us, they verify that they have workers' comp insurance. Otherwise, the town would be liable if they got hurt. So he kind of goes through all of those. So our experience modifier this year was 0.78, which is fabulous. And we can only go to 0.77, so we don't have much further down to go. That's the minimum. So it's a 3-year tracking. So I think it's 2017 will drop off next year, and then the next one, rolls on. As Brian pointed out in his email, the average modifier is 1.04. And Brian and I were speaking earlier today, I will get a refund on the premium I paid for 21-22 of $1,000, roughly $1,100. The $10,000 savings that Mr. Hume was talking to Brian about yesterday, I believe, is the savings we have compared to having a 1.04.
Gotcha.
that if you had a modifier of that, our premium would be like $10,000 more. So we'll be getting a refund of like $1,100, which is not bad. That means the salary estimates I had were pretty good. And I generally speaking, I try to give what I've budgeted, which is usually just a little bit, I kind of round up. So at least that covers us. Because I don't want to have to then be paying more workers' comp premium. So anyway, so that's the great news. And like Brian said yesterday, all of the safety classes that we go through, Sunny's crew being mindful of what they're doing out on the street, Jason, of course, and Ryan, those are, all of those places are the highest exposed areas. Although I have to say, if you've been in this building when Brian's cooking in the kitchen, you're at risk.
Not as much when you're at his dinner table.
So our next class will be on kitchen safety. But anyways, that's the workers' comp audit information. And then the second part was to talk a little bit more about, Larry had brought up about the financial study for the Water Enterprise Fund. So the State Treasurer's Office has key performance indicators, and it's actually through the North Carolina School of Government. They have a whole website that has a dashboard, and you can play with that thing in all kinds of ways to compare yourself, your rates to other systems. So I'm going to be taking our audited financials, all the things from that, plugging it into those. They don't have our fiscal year 21 in there yet because we just submitted audit reports. So try and get what our key performance indicators are for financial health, but then also look at the rate study stuff. And I just wanted to point this out that when we switched to a tiered rate structure, which was in 2010, when I looked at that and we were looking at how much the average person uses, we purposely kept that first tier rate at the same rate per 1,000 gallons that it was. So our water rates for that first level have been the same for over 11 years. Since the time before that a rate increase happened. And I don't think we did not change rates so it's been at least since 2008. That base rate, not base rate, the usage tier, that very first usage tier has been the same. So I want to look at, Larry was talking about looking at the base usage again to see, okay, so now has the average household started to use more? Like, do we need to make some adjustments there on what the tiers are or just what the rates are and that type of stuff? The reports that I get monthly from Carter Craven, I don't get a per person usage. I get an 18-page billing detail that shows me various things. But my contact there for reporting is out of the office until November 22nd. She's at an out-of-state training for 2 weeks. And there are, as we've talked about in various things in the past, there's a lot of reports that Carter Craven can do for us that they might be able to customize for us for this. So I just need to talk to her about that because I don't want to waste my time of going through monthly detail billing to try and weed through stuff and really back into usage information when that's just going to be futile if they can do it by building a customized report for me.
For like full-time residents, part-time residents.
We probably wouldn't be able to go from full down to that detail really. But
Just a base.
we would be able to say, so, of the inside residential, what is the, I don't even want to use an average. I don't want to use an average. I can come up with an average. But the majority of people use this
Medium.
amount. Yeah,
Well, we want
exactly.
to get a bell curve.
Yeah.
And based on categories, like 2,500 gallons and less, 5,000 gallons and less, 10,000 gallons, 50,000 gallons. So you can see where the bulk of our revenues are coming from. And if you're looking at having to adjust rates, that might be the area you want to look at.
Right.
I've also included, the Finance Committee has the data of Emerald Isle, which is very expensive. Both Banks Water, familiar name, which is they're about 20% higher than we are on everything. And strangely enough, Atlantic Beach, which strangely enough on low water usage is 20% lower than we are.
Well, and so on that little dashboard thing, you can, so you pick us, right, at the top, and then you select, it's just a water fund. It's not water and sewer. We're just a water fund. So we got to be careful that we're not comparing ourselves to somebody,
We're not.
you know, but I'm
Yeah.
saying. And then you can select, I want to do a 25-mile radius of here to see what the rates are. I want to look at the same water source that they're pulling from to see what their rates are. You can pick similar size of customers, similar median household income. You can choose all kinds of things to compare yourself to. And on the various ones that I picked, our rates were at the, you know, your little dials like this, we're over here. I mean, we're at the low end for our rate on various categories when you select them. I didn't look at them all, but you know, some of the ones, the 25-mile radius, same water source we're pulling from. Size can vary because we're a coastal town. So, you know, I don't want to compare me to, you know, a mountain town or something like that. But, you know,
And
there's
big comparison issue, and I haven't checked recently, but last time we looked at this in detail, Atlantic Beach Water Enterprise Fund has no debt.
Right.
Because they're 60 years old. Me now, they didn't last time.
so we're moving forward with that. Just the customized reporting won't happen until at least probably after Thanksgiving, because she'll be coming back right before Thanksgiving. But some of the other key performance stuff.
I'm sorry, Brian, since you mentioned that, I might just point out that it's interesting, and we'll play with it when we get together on all this. But looking at the way Atlantic Beach has structured their rates, they are very favorable to the very, very low users, but extremely penalizing the very high users and the in-between users. I mean, they reach our rates up around 5,000 gallons. And once you start going above that, they're 20, 30% higher.
Yeah, so their tiers jump then.
There are no tiers, flat rate.
Oh.
They're flat rate. They're whatever their charge is, and ours is $11, our base charge. Their base charge is $11.75.
Right.
Up to 2,500 gallons. No, 2,000 even. Ours is 2,500. Up to 2,000 gallons, that's all you pay, $11.75.
Right.
Everything over 2,000, regardless of how far you go, $4.90 a gallon.
Okay.
So it's an interesting structure.
It
I'm
is
sorry.
interesting, but we're not going to resolve
You're correct.
the rate structure tonight.
Yeah, we're going to meet on it.
We're going to be looking into this for future conversation in
Mhm.
considerable detail. Are there any questions for Julie?
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, next up is our fire chief, Jason Baker. Are you there, Chief Baker?
Yes, sir. Everybody hear me all right?
Okay, we
Yes.
can.
All right, yeah. First one, when the time changes, people say, you know, it's kind of a key to go change your batteries and your smoke detectors. You can't harp on smoke detectors enough since they were invented. They say like, I believe the statistic is 3 out of 5 deaths, structure fire related deaths, those people did not have operational smoke detectors. I say check them monthly, you know, just pop them, make sure they go off monthly. Anytime I'm going on a trip or something, or this happened to me the other day, anytime I'm going on a trip or whatever, I'll check smoke detectors before I go if the wife and kids are going to be staying home. And sure enough, one was gone. And so I ended up holding off the trip and running to Walmart and changing out my smoke detectors at my house. But it's just smart to check them, make sure they're operational. You know, they do save lives, it's proven. ISO rate inspection on that was on October 27th. Went well. Still waiting on a proper grade to come in. They say like 90 to 120 days, but usually don't take that long. But all went well, I believe. And even after coming out of a COVID year, you know, when everything was shut down and training was shut down, things like that, you know, we did, you know, I still think we come out pretty well. I figure if they do those things every 5 years, our last one was in 2017, so we kind of got hit early, 4 years. So maybe if they slide to 6 years this next go around, I might have one more of those to go in my career. And that's gonna be it.
Bring you back.
That's all I got. Any questions?
Any questions? for Chief Baker?
I've got a question, Jason.
Yes, sir.
Are you, I know you've offered to have your people go out and help people change their, their smoke detectors or bring them up to date. Are we still doing that, and how many are you doing approximately?
I don't have a proper number. We get random calls to come out and check them and stuff, or people ask us to come install one for them. Either one that they've bought or some we get from the state when we can get them from the state. It's been kind of rough to get them from the state here lately, but if anything, if somebody calls and they need one, we'll go buy one, and get it in for them. But a couple, 3 calls a month to check them, and maybe, usually in summertime we get mainly the calls to come out and like actually do installs of them. But yeah, we do get those calls, and I got a new guy, Jerry. I think some of you guys have met Jerry by this point, and he's big on that stuff, and he's really tracking all of the fire prevention things that we do. And I can't wait for some of the other stuff that he's working on to bring to you guys, working with the aquarium, things like that. But smoke detectors are considered fire prevention, and he tracks those for us with the state. And in the next ISO, whenever that will be, that'll be a huge credit for us going forward.
I just wondered with an older population, if there's a lot of people that need help every year doing their upgrade, putting new batteries in.
Oh yeah, we get calls to come check them, or a lot of times what's crazy is we get the calls, people, the thing is beeping, and trying to tell them that there's a bad battery and they don't know exactly why it's beeping or whatever, and we get calls to go out there and fix it for them, for which we do. The one funny story I had one time was it was a kitchen fire, elderly couple. It was actually in one of the condos, but a kitchen fire, and they complained that their smoke detector wasn't going off, and I had to advise them that that wasn't a smoke detector, that was a door alarm. I did not have smoke detectors in the house, for which we went and got them smoke detectors and put in. But we do home safety inspections. We do. Haven't done one in the past couple months, I don't think, but we were doing quite a few of them through the summer. And some of those inspections, the the smoke detectors are not placed properly where they should be in the house, and we can advise and move them. But yeah, we do offer all that.
I'm glad to hear that, because they actually save lives.
Yeah, they do. That's a proven fact.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for Chief Baker?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Next up is our Police Chief, Ryan Thompson. Ryan, are you there?
I am. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Hey, good evening. Kind of random. This month, off of 2 traffic stops, our guys arrested 2 fugitives, one from Colorado for a litany of domestic violence charges out of Colorado, and one from Virginia for felony probation violation out of Virginia. So I get asked occasionally why our guys stop for things, minor, such as equipment violations or registration violations. And these are 2 striking examples of people traveling through our town that probably shouldn't be, that other states were wanting to bring back for so they could face the penalties for whatever actions they took in those states. So good work to our guys for that. And you can see from the pictures, I don't know how well you can tell, we are loaded down with food from the annual food drive. This is the 3rd year we've done this, and this is by far the most food that we've ever had donated to us. So really want to appreciate all the residents and folks that turned out to donate food for Martha's Mission Covered. And they just took a load of food down to Louisiana because those folks are still struggling after the last hurricane. And, don't we know how that feels? So we're going to help them replenish the stocks of what they donated down in Louisiana. So our residents are helping not just folks here in Carteret County, but folks down on the southern part of the country. So really appreciate that. And the last thing I've got, just real quick, it's not on the bullet point. I know you guys are tracking the issues and some of the issues that we've been experiencing in our emergency communications center, and that stuff is still kind of moving forward. And we've got a meeting scheduled next week to discuss maybe some possible solutions or remedies and address some of our concerns with county staff next week. So once that meeting happens, I'll keep you guys informed through Mr. Kramer about what the progress is and what was discussed at the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I've
Anybody
got
have-
one, Mayor, I've got one question. Chief, are you still, based on this past season, a Cubs fan?
You know, I'm going to take it easy on you because you've been under the weather, but that's okay. But yes, I am still a Cubs fan. Thank you, Ted.
Just wondering.
Commissioner Connect.
I think it's just great, the amount of food that's been donated and, the other products and so forth. I just hope here, Ryan, though, you're not creating a workman's comp issue if somebody falls and trips over those.
Hey, I guess if I'm going to get hurt, I'd rather get hurt doing something like that than, anything else. But no, we're going to be very careful and exercise and practice proper lifting when we're loading all that stuff up in the trailer.
You're getting many items that are in short supply.
Yeah, no, they'll take anything just about as long as it's not expired. So, it's good turnout.
I'm just kidding. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Sonny Cunningham, the Public Service Department and our water enterprise head.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Ted, I'm glad you're okay.
Thank you.
Glad you're okay, Cappy. No, we just repaired the telemetry system for our water system. We had a component go down at the Trinity Center, and it was a transducer, so we got it back operating, and we also we had to calibrate it too, not just put it in there. Of course, we put a new cord on the flagpole at the public safety building, but I'm looking for a better solution. So I talked to this company out of Raleigh, and maybe we can put a coated stainless steel cable in, because that flagpole plays hell with it, So anyway, and then I scheduled a system-wide leak detection again for rural water. Today I did some contact hours and got to talk to them, and it's good that we get to take we get the benefit of being a part of them, But anyway, and then we certified the recent lead and copper analysis. The EPA did that, and also which is not on the board, I didn't put on here, but we received the generator, the mobile generator for the stormwater pump at the golf course. And as soon as we get the cord on it, we can do a run through and make sure that fully operational, then pay the bill. So you guys all have any questions?
Have any
Right,
questions?
Mr. Alicia pay the bill after we fix it. So
Okay, Sonny, well, thank you very much. You're doing a
you're
great
welcome. And thank you, guys.
job. Next up, covering the town planner and the building inspector's reports is Kevin Reed, our town planner. Kevin, you're on again.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
We can.
Good. Good to be back with you again. Very briefly, as I do every month, just to update you on single-family landscape permit requests. We did issue one for the month of October. We currently have 5 under review. And as I say every month, Jim and I continue to respond, it seems almost daily, to questions regarding new construction. I would not be surprised if during the first half of this fiscal year, if we don't end up permitting 10 to 12 new single-family homes. That activity still remains robust. Received confirmation that following our community rating system recertification, that Pineville Shores is going to maintain its Class 6 rating. This is good news for people in special flood hazard areas who carry flood insurance, because it offers them a potential reduction of up to 20% on their flood insurance premium. And then finally, as you all know, we were selected some time ago to participate in the North Carolina Resilient Coastal Communities Program. At your August meeting, you appointed the community action team, and the initial meeting of that CAT team is scheduled for next week at 3:30 p.m. at Town Hall. We're looking forward to working with Beth Smyer and is the consultant there and working through this project with them. So that's all I have from a planning perspective. Be happy to answer any questions you have before I put on the building inspector's hat.
Any questions for Kevin? Okay, moving right along. Building
All right,
inspector.
so for the month of October, yes, sir. For the month of October, 8 building permits issued, total value in excess of $3.2 million, included 6 mechanical permits, 4 electrical permits, and 2 plumbing permits. Total value of all permits issued was $3,321,972. Issued 31 tree removal permits, and Jim performed a total of 121 inspections during the month of October.
Okay, any questions, comments for Kevin? Thank you very much, Kevin. Next up is our town clerk, Charlie Rossi. Take it away, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's weird being the closing act. Acorn Court, we're moving forward. We have one of the 2 easements signed. Really, it's 1.5. We have Dr. Jalazinski's easement signed, and we have it on hand. Ms. Gilcott, we have her signature, but her name and her husband's name is on the property deed. So she is taking that to her husband to sign, and she'll have that for me next week. And after that, all of the easements will be recorded. We're going to set up a meeting with the Public Services Committee, myself and Bree, for next week. I sent an email earlier today. We're looking at Tuesday for that meeting, so that'll work. And then moving forward, I'm working on the bid documents right now. There's some elements to it that are going to be very similar to the Phase 2 documents, so I'm working on adjusting those for this project and making sure they're correct. I'll meet with Melissa and Bree to finalize the bid documents. Moving forward, the CAC is interested in doing a year of the tree giveaway. If you remember, after Hurricane Florence, they did a giveaway to replace some of the damaged trees in town. We're still getting a lot of tree removal applications for trees that were damaged. So the CAC would like to move forward with an event for a tree giveaway. I submitted a request for a community tree recovery event with the Arbor Day Foundation, and they just got back to me that they would have a potential sponsor for the event. I'm waiting on a follow-up for that from them, but pretty much they would cover about half of the cost of the project. They would also help us procuring the trees with many of their vendors across the state, and they would help us with providing education materials. Estimated costs we're looking at, Steve Felch recommended 500 trees about 4 foot tall, mix of wax myrtles, willow oaks, and live oaks. And his estimation was about $3,000 for that project, but that would depend a lot on the going rate of trees. So once we get back with the Arbor Day Foundation, I'll have a solid number and we'll move with a budget amendment for that.
Yeah, thank you. Good work.
And then for a couple quick updates, the sidewalk survey has been sent out through through Coastal Press in Morehead City. They told us 7 to 10 business days from when we send it over to them. So the latest, those surveys will be sent out on November 19th. We will then allow 3 weeks to return. So we would have the deadline for those on December 10th. And one more neat thing I added to the survey. So you see the QR code down there. If you'd like to submit the survey online, you just take your phone and you put your camera to that. And then you have the survey pop up right there. So you can submit it very easily. So it'll ask for your serial number and that will be printed on the upper right-hand corner of your survey. So hopefully we should be getting a solid response on this and we look forward to seeing what they say. What else do I have here?
Okay.
Ethics training for returning in new commissioners. I've sent in a request with the School of Government. They're going to notify me when registration opens for that. So we'll move with that early next year. And finally, we're bringing back the Ken Jones Public Service Award this year. I'm sending out an email tomorrow with the application for people to fill out. Bill recommended we end the application process on December 3rd. And that way the committee could meet the Monday or Tuesday prior to the next Board of Commissioners meeting and we could approve the winner at the December meeting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Good idea.
Perfect.
Any questions for Charlie here?
I see you received an on-ground survey for access
Oh,
B.
yes, sorry, I skipped that.
That's all right. Did they put permanent markers in the ground?
No, they put stakes in the ground. Brian, Sonny and I are going to walk out next week and look at putting some sort of permanent barriers where the encroachments are.
The only reason I asked that question, I guess I'm gonna stick in the mud on that, is that generally surveyors, unless you ask them up front, don't do that. And since some of the discussion, had a conversation with some, and they said, well, for homeowners, they really don't care. We do them every time the property's sold.
Okay.
But for an easement, I mean, I would think, just like the state puts in a permanent concrete post, we ought to specify that right up front, so that we don't have to keep doing it.
I didn't specify that for this, but I'll certainly
But I
remember
mean,
that.
just meant in general, it's just, you know, because we backed into that down at the one on,
False.
yeah,
Was it Maritime or?
well, the one down
Yeah, I know.
Dayton Place, not Dayton Place, down your way.
Yeah, down.
But anyway, it's a general thing.
Trinity Center.
Yeah.
No, we're talking about the one, is it Maritime?
It's off of Forest.
We call it the Qualls access.
Falls access, yeah. But I think you can specify like 4-inch concrete posts, like what the state uses. If you notice by all the roads, the state has them. It's each road.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but the reason we didn't do that for Qualls is because we wanted Sonny to put out those permanent markers, correct?
We did it at Qualls ourselves.
We ended up using reinforcement rods and plastic. Trouble is,
Likely what we'll do, we don't need to pay a con, Sonny can easily.
no, it's reinforcement rods don't last too long. That's having had it myself, they'll rust away, so.
Okay. Anything else for Charlie?
Mm.
Okay, well, thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comments? Second round, check it out. We'll let you walk back. Okay. Moving right along, we're up to mayor and commissioner reports. Is there anybody who would like to raise anything or make any suggestions for the agenda for the next meeting or anything? Clark.
Yeah, I do, just a little thing. I've had reason for some part of my life to go down to Cape Carteret every week for a while. And I would hope that we could relook at the speed limit from Iron Steamer Pier down west. I realize when we got into this, and NCDOT said they were gonna have it from one end to the other and yada, yada, yada. But very honestly, from Iron Steamer Pier down to the property line is next to nothing. And I've seen a couple of, in fact, this week, this Monday afternoon, I saw a commercial truck hauling past on the yellow line. They got so frustrated, they just went on past. I think if we don't show reasonable moderation, we're gonna be causing some accidents. And I mean, I know some people do that much more often and maybe they've gotten used to it, but I would try to remind you that Ryan had requested from our property line actually to Pine Knoll Boulevard. I mean, I think it's certainly from a safety standpoint, the curve and so forth, it makes sense to have it to Iron Steamer Pier. But beyond that, this time of year is just absolutely atrocious, it seems to me. And we're almost causing problems. And as I say, I've observed, the worst I observed was this last Monday. That's why I brought it up. But I have seen other people pass other times. And, but anyway, I would hope we could relook at that and remember that NCDOT put Brian or put us in the bind and said they wouldn't approve the other unless you approve that. And I would just point out, if you go down further west in Emerald, it's 0.5 of a mile, that's 35 miles an hour. NCDOT has it 45 going around the roundabout by Publix. It's 45 there. And they're lecturing us about what it should be west of Iron Steamer Pier. Yeah, Iron Steamer Pier. So I would just ask that we look at that later on. It's not what we asked for.
Commissioner,
Following up what Clark just mentioned, when I was out campaigning, the one issue that was raised most often by people was the speed limit, during the off season, especially. Yeah, but I would agree with Clark. We ought to really take another look, see what we can do.
See, Chief Thompson, are you still on by any chance?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay. Now, like DOT, I believe, told us that if we were going to lower the speed limit, we were supposed to do it from border to border. And, it was going to be one speed for the whole year. If we go back now and ask them to segment the town and have parts of the town vary at different times of the year, what do you think they're going to say to that, especially after we passed those resolutions that went along with our agreement to lower the speed limit?
Well, speaking to our engineer earlier in the year, DOT was trying to move away from the seasonal speed limits because it was hard for them to track statewide which municipality had a speed limit on which date and which state it was going to change. And so they didn't force us to change the speed limit. They just said, if you're interested in lowering the speed limit, we're not going to consider a seasonal speed limit anymore. And we're going to want you to do it town-wide, because in the past, I think we can all remember, Atlantic Beach was 45, and then it would switch to 35, and then to 45, and you would travel up and down both banks, and the speed limit would change 7 or 8 times, and that's what they're trying to move away from. I think if we reapproach them with the request that Mr. Edwards and Mr. Connect were talking about, I don't know how much they would favor that, because for about a 1.5 mile section, it's 35 before that. I don't know that DOT would favor changing about a 1.5 mile section to 45. When you get into Indian Beach, it goes back to 35. But that would be up to DOT.
Do you understand what's going on in Emerald Isle? How do they get away with it, just because they haven't changed in a long time?
They haven't changed in years, yeah.
Yeah, and DOT said that they did plan on addressing that issue due to the population changes and the visitor increase that we've seen. And they could foresee in the next several years, they didn't promise it now, but in the next several years at island-wide, it would be 35. But, much like the change for us was brought about by town staff and by the Board of Commissioners, I think if it was going to happen now, it would have to be brought about by Emerald Isle and not DOT, at least not at this point.
I guess I personally feel that if we readdress this and make a move to go back to 45 for a 1.5 mile part of the year, part of town, that we're going to look like a fish out of water. It took us years to get all the stars in alignment to lower the speed limit. And the majority of the people I've talked to clearly are in favor of the lower speed limit. And I think we're just going to look like a fish out of water, flip-flopping all over the place.
Yeah.
If we try and readdress this.
I guess that was one of my frustrations is bringing up of the seasonal switch and everything. And I was the one person that was overvoted with that. I mean, I don't know if y'all remember that. I was saying we should do seasonal and should leave the thing open. And everybody felt like it needed to go to 35. So I think we need to leave it. I mean,
Well, DOT told me that the seasonal limits weren't going to be an option anymore. They were trying to move away from that.
I can't imagine the confusion it's going to cause if we go from 35 to 45 and a 1.5 miles later, we're back to 35. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well,
We're talking about a matter of seconds.
We'll drive that more often and feel the frustration.
Oh, I've seen it,
And
drive that way all the time.
It's perception, Clark.
I mean, maybe it is. Yeah.
Feeling 35.
Coming home when you really got to go to the bathroom,
Brian?
that's when it really gets you.
Brian, could you talk to some people at DOT and just see what their reaction would be?
I don't think they need to. I think we've made the decision.
I think we
I
should
just
stick.
point out, they held a gun to our head. And I don't appreciate any government doing that to anybody. Sorry.
Clark,
And
I don't,
they said they wouldn't
respectfully, I don't agree with that.
unless we did the whole thing.
They just said that
That was absolute. That's
And they
the
wouldn't
only
do
reason I voted
seasonal.
for it. 'cause
and they
that was
wouldn't do
so important.
seasonal. We could have left it
It's their
like it
highway.
was. Yeah, we could have left it as it was.
Okay. I don't know where we go with this.
Well,
I
it was just to bring up this
alone.
stuff. That's all right. It was a place to bring up concerns.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to raise?
We're going to get real, I do, with the money coming from FEMA at some point, whether it's in December or first quarter of next year, we are really need to start thinking about staffing levels, because it's gonna be crazy. I don't think we can have Brian doing it like he did on the East Side Water and really keep surviving. So we're gonna have to really think about that going forward, I think.
I think that's a very good point.
I think Brian was gonna, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, that was something that was gonna come up in our February.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a plan.
Yeah, but if we get the money in December or January, let's say, I don't know that we can wait until the next budget cycle for that. That money will be sitting there, and which means costs are gonna continue to increase. It's something I think we need to address shorter than that.
You know,
Just my opinion.
I anticipate that in addition to the 3.2 million excess FEMA funds, $400,000 ARP, there's probably going to be an entire another round of potentially even larger dollar figures in this infrastructure bill, in particular for the water enterprise fund capital, based off of what I've read there.
There's an alternative. There is an alternative. We can create a bunk room here for the town manager, and he can just sleep here all the time.
No duck hunt.
Well, we get time off for duck hunting.
All right, Charlie, we got what,
Okay,
3 more minutes?
We can add a bedroom or a room in the new public service building.
There you go.
Right.
using FEMA money, right?
It's just not good business sense, and it's not efficient for the town manager to have to be running projects like this. And I think there's probably 5 or 6 of them involved in there.
Maybe we should have the commissioners, is that the administrative committee? Have a meeting and talk about, like, start thinking about the kind of person we would like to hire, what their qualifications would be, and what the job description would look like. So that, if we do get these funds sooner rather than later, we'll be a little better prepared to move out with a vacancy notice.
Excellent idea, John.
Okay, we can talk about this offline.
One thing I just wanted to mention, because this came up at the strategic planning, that you mentioned at the strategic planning committee, and somebody made the comment that things have gotten more complicated, or I don't know if that was you, Ted, but one of the things is that things have gotten a whole lot more complicated with all of the management of these funds. Because like Brian said, the uniform guidance stuff is enough to spin your head around. The audit requirement that we now have to send a letter to the state with everybody signing it, and this and that and the other thing. Well, the agencies are coming out with these requirements that they're putting on us, and they don't have they haven't decided all of the stuff behind it yet.
Yeah. The guidance.
Just like the funds are probably going to be the same way. And when you're a small municipality like this, you wind up chasing your tail until they figure it out. And so the $3.2 million with the 13 projects that we have on FEMA excess funds, all of those there's a portal for everything. I have a portal for FEMA, I have a portal for North Carolina Department of Public Safety. For the same projects, I have to do a federal portal and a state portal to report to them. And then they have quarterly reports on this and this and that. It's ridiculous. It is far more complicated than any grant that we ever did in our earlier years here.
You know, we better be, I'm sorry, Julie, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, it's a lot of
Sounds like you need to
red
hire a
tape.
budget person.
Every other town on the beach is gonna be getting money, some more, some less maybe. And we're all gonna be looking for the same person, for the same qualities or qualifications. And I think sooner rather than later on this.
Commissioner Carcella.
I thought we had somebody under contract to help us administer those FEMA funds. Is that not correct?
For some of the activities, yes. For some of what you have to do, yes. There's some of the bidding stuff there. We might still have to do some of the bidding stuff. As we get into the reporting on the new projects, they might be able to do that instead of me. But so we would have to see, but as far as project management goes,
You're
I'm not sure on that.
Yeah,
You're not
well,
touching that.
that's where I'm coming from. Are we really talking about needing something beyond what I thought we already have to administer those funds from all the logistics of FEMA and state and everything else versus a person to truly spearhead and manage a project to make sure it gets done in a timely fashion and can then also do some of those financial reporting things perhaps related to that project.
I think we're looking, that's the ideal person,
But it's
somebody
not-
who would do both.
Certainly,
Type of thing rather than.
we have to figure out exactly what type of person we're looking for, what their qualifications are, and the job description is part of what we want them to do.
All
It's
these,
a lot more complicated than,
all these funds are, they aren't really a windfall, but they do help us keep our tax rate lower. But when you think about it, where do the funds come from? They come from your taxes you pay the federal government, which are going up. If I read what the current administration is proposing to do. And then if we have to hire additional staff in order to manage these funds and expend them, you know, I'm just putting that out there for us to really start thinking about the total cost and benefits of this stuff. I mean, we're caught in it, and there's no way to get out of the spiral that we and every other town are in right now. We have to do our best to get our share, I guess, and but it's not free money by any stretch of the imagination.
I think we all agree on that, John. We better spend it wisely and have the right people managing it.
Anybody else?
No.
At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? We're done, we're done.
I gotta run, I got a growler, a beer growler waiting.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Hi, Neil.
Yes, thing, use the chest, I think.
All right.